This guy, Mr. Gabe. I got to meet him last year in Denver City. He was speaking, and he had an exciting story. So I tell you guys, turn off your phones, because you don't want to miss a thing. Let's welcome Gabe up here.
Thank you, James. We're getting there. My name's Gabe. I'm a grateful recovered addict and alcoholic. And I am absolutely blessed to be here and get situated. The first thing is I want to thank everyone here, and James and Danielle and Catherine and Erica. Behind the scenes, Kevin. There's more people here, Kevin, than in Denver City. Kurt, anyone that had anything to do with this, guys. And most importantly, I want to thank the newcomers, Serenity House, all the people that were standing up that have less than a year. So I'm obviously talking to everybody here, but y'all really are the guests of honor. Those of y'all that are in the trenches right now. I'm an alumni of Serenity House. We'll kind of get to that. I know the struggle is real. All of us in this room know the struggle is real. And, you couldn't have named or had the theme for this convention more prompt. The steps that got us here. And step one's a pretty big one. I had lots of trouble with it for lots of years. And, guys, I don't care what you call it. There's nowhere in the book that says rock bottom, wilderness, or desert. There is a spot in the book that says you're going to come to a point in your life. There will be a fork in the road, and a decision has to be made whether you're going to blot on to the bitter end or you're going to accept spiritual help. And I finally got to that place in my life. And guys, that's what we're here to talk about. And I want to ask y'all something. I want to ask y'all why. Because I got stuck on the how and what of this thing for a really long time. All I knew was that I was destroying everyone in my life. My family was destroying my life. And all I thought was maybe if I can just quit drinking, all this will get better. Maybe if I work these steps and I start reading this book and I go to treatment and I fill out this workbook and all this stuff. And I didn't ask why. And then I fully read this book one time, and I started to ask that question. And I learned that this really had nothing to do about drinking. It had nothing to do about drugging. It had everything to do about this. Now, I don't drink normally. My grandfather died when I was 10 years old. He was 66 years old, and I watched him drink himself to death. The man couldn't put a cork in the bottle. The family would come in and we would take turns watching him, and he'd find a way, just like we all did. And hospice was brought in, and he took his last breaths. He'd still be alive today, probably. There was nothing else wrong with him until his liver failed him. Both my uncles on my mom's side, on that side of the family, have been recovered for 35, 36 years respectively in this program. And I remember when I was trying to get this thing, my uncle, I'm screaming bloody murder at him. I'm drunk. The family didn't know what to do. I'd robbed them of everything, their emotional support, security, lied to them. And I screamed, I don't want this. And he looked at me and he said, that's exactly the point. You don't have a choice. Page 52 says, we were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be a real help to other people. That was me. Hit me right between the eyes when I was reading this. More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He is very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents a stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. I knew I was a fraud, and I couldn't look in the mirror, and I couldn't love myself. There was no love for me to give myself, you, my family, God, anybody. I was too busy taking from every single person that came in the path of my destruction. 10 years old, I watched my grandfather drink himself to death. My family, I was raised in a great family. My dad's a doctor. I never wanted for anything. My parents are still married. They were married when I was born. This disease is entirely egalitarian. It doesn't care who you are, where you come from, how rich you are, how poor you are. Frankly, it doesn't matter. It'll bring anybody low, and it will destroy any family. So my parents were really hard drinkers. They didn't catch this thing. They didn't catch the bullet. But they drank and they partied really hard, and I grew up with that. And there was a liquor cabinet next to my bedroom, which I would highly not advise doing if you're raising children, especially if you're one of us. And when I was 14 years old, I had never been to church, not one time. My parents were not believers. If anything, they were just partiers. They believed in doing good, and if you do good, then good things happen. We were 14 years old. My dad was a pilot, and we were in Colorado, and we lost our engine on takeoff, and we fell about 1,000 feet. And on the way down, I had never had a relationship with God, but they say there are no atheists in foxholes. Turns out, in my life, that was correct. So I did a couple of things, three things. I looked at the horses in the field, I tightened my seatbelt, and then I prayed. And it broke both my parents' backs. My dad caught on fire, blew up in the airplane. He's alive. They're both able to walk. I was actually probably the least injured, but about a month after that, after that happened, I kind of came home to this hero's welcome. And all my life I knew that I didn't play sports as good as everyone else did. My dad kind of was always on me about that stuff. And then all of a sudden I come home after this airplane crash and like I'm this hero. And something in my dopamine had been triggered. And I liked it. And about a month later, two of my friends who used to hang out with me before this whole thing happened came over to my house, and they had the bright idea, maybe we should start drinking the alcohol in the liquor cabinet next to your bedroom. Why not? So we began my drinking career. And at the early age 14, and I outdrank both of these guys. I put down 12 shots of vodka, and I weighed about 85 pounds. And I figured out I was better at something than these guys were. And so we did this continually, every weekend. High school came around, and we partied every night. We tried to live up to the movie Dazed and Confused. And in fact, we probably out-partied those guys, if you really look back on it. And I went to my senior prom, and I was so drunk at senior prom that I cussed out the ceiling, cussed out the principals, cussed out the teacher, took off running, fell down a flight of stairs. The police are trying to arrest me, and I run out in front of the Cactus Hotel in San Angelo, Texas, and stop all the traffic. And cars are honking. I've got, half my shirt's ripped off. And my head principal walks out to the street with me, and I explained to all of San Angelo, Texas, that she's the greatest effing principal on the planet. We got this, fellas. Gabe, come here. Well, there was quite the scene caused, so I had to go do something. I had to either go to alternative schooling or treatment. So, at the age of 17, I went to my first treatment facility. I went to La Hacienda in Hunt, Texas. And I went through the motions, and I filled out the workbooks, and everyone just wanted to get me home so I could walk the stage and go on and do what I was going to do with my life, because there were big plans, because I was an important guy. And something in my mind when I went to treatment triggered me, and I was going to go to Texas Tech University. I was pretty sure I'd wind up dead in the gutter if I went to Texas Tech University. So my quasi-godfather, who's very important in the story, is an attorney in San Angelo, and he went to this place called the Citadel. It's a military college in South Carolina. So I thought, well, maybe if I go there it'll change everything. Because I knew back then there was something wrong. I knew back then that I didn't drink like everybody else. I mean, I'm coming home at midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, and fighting with my dad on weeknights. And I've got a 4.0, and I'm in the top of my class, so I kept producing. I probably at that time had compiled 12 MIPTs by the time I was 18. And the attorney, Tip Hargrove, in my life just makes them go away. They just kind of disappear. So I go to the Citadel in South Carolina, and I'm a leader there. I was honor rep, top of my class, and a horrible alcoholic. And I tried my very hardest to get kicked out of that school. And I got into a fight with the tactical officers, pulled a gun out of a cop's holster, tried to shoot myself in a complete fit of rage, an alcoholic rage. Got a DWI, all that went away. I was producing over here. I was able to manipulate. I was able to talk my way out of every situation I came into. And there were zero consequences. There just weren't any. And so I continued living my life that way. And I went to law school, and I graduated the Citadel, and I met a girl. And we dated, and she realized pretty quick that I had a pretty bad alcohol problem, and we lived together for 2 years. A year and a half, no, 18 months of that, I had a broken leg, because it turns out when you break your leg and you're an alcoholic, you tend to keep breaking your leg over and over and over again. And so I did that, and just couldn't get it together. And the day we graduated, she walked out on me. And she had had enough. She said, it's either me or the bottle. And she deuced. Out. And I tried to drink myself to death. That was, at the time, I thought this rock bottom thing I'd been hearing about, right? And so I went to see a psychiatrist, and you know what they did? They wrote me a script for lots of things. And, they were like, well, you're going to be depressive, major depressive disorder, probably you're bipolar too. I was like, well, while we're prescribing all this stuff, can I get some speed? Let's get some fun stuff in here too. And they prescribed it, knowing that I was an alcoholic. Well, you're ADHD too. You're off the scale. Well, okay. Well, let's fix that too, please. Guys, I love it this book. I love it. I love it when Dr. Carl Jung is working with Roland Hazard and Dr. Silkworth. My dad's a man of science. And you've got two doctors that are observing this thing. And I'm not talking about anyone else's diagnosis. I'm not talking about anyone else's. This is my story. And by the way, on this story, guys, this story is a little crazy. Should probably put that out there. And this is not everyone's story. Okay, it doesn't have to get this bad. The journey is the same for everybody. It is absolutely the same. Everybody in this room has walked through this. When Wendy was speaking earlier, I was like, I relate to 100% of everything she just said. Because it is the same. Circumstances and facts are different for all of us. Some of us are a little bit more hard-headed than others. But I love it because these are men of science, and they cared so much, and they had worked with alcoholics, and they had worked with these people that are just throwing their lives away, and they tried everything, and nothing worked. And the only thing that worked was this phenomenon that was spiritual, and it was inexplicable to these guys, but they knew it worked. And they said, this is the only hope you've got. You are beyond human aid. It's in God's hands now. And everyone in this room knows what I'm talking about. So I got the medication, and I went on, and guys, I couldn't get it together. I tried to take the bar exam 3 times. I couldn't make it to day 2. And I was drinking myself into oblivion, and I ended up coming back to San Angelo. I was drinking so much. My 2 best friends, they're both banging heroin and methamphetamines, decided the guy that was drinking needed to go to rehab. So I was putting some alcohol away. And so I woke up one morning in San Angelo in 2011 and I had a bag packed, and they're like, we're taking you to rehab. And you're taking me to rehab? Okay, are y'all staying too? No, we're dropping you off. And I was going to come to Abilene, Texas. And guys, I've been to Abilene multiple times in my life, all against my volition, except for this one. And really, I don't think this is against my volition either. And I'll get into that. I'm absolutely blessed to be here. But that was the first trip to Abilene. So we're going to stop by Grandma's house. That's her name, Grandma's house. And we got a handful of lower tabs. And we stopped at the 8 o'clock in the morning at the only bar in San Angelo that was open at the time. And I took probably 30 shots. And all I remember was the bartender saying, do you have a death wish? And I said, just keep pouring. My friends are outside smoking. They don't realize how many shots I took. So then they come back in and grab me, and we drink a bottle of Crown on the way to Abilene. And they put me in a wheelchair at Serenity House. And by the grace of God, there was a nurse that was, on duty that was there. And she was like, I don't want to put him in a bed yet. There's something wrong. And I stopped breathing. And so they resuscitated me and took me to Hendrick Hospital. And a couple of days later, I woke up, and my mom and my sister are sitting next to me, and they're crying, they're bawling, and I'm intubated, and I'm like, what is going on here? And so the ICU nurse comes in and freaks out, goes gets the doctor, and they take everything out, and they asked me if I knew where I was, and I'm like, I was on the way to Abilene. And he was like, I can't believe you're not brain dead. And I had a .556 BAC. And they said the only reason why you survived that is because your tolerance was so high. You have been putting away so much alcohol that you're going to be able to walk out of here. But if you do that again, probably won't be the same. So then I went to Fredericksburg and went to Serenity House out there and got out. Met a girl at Serenity House. We left together. She picked me up. Don't do this. This is how this ends. Let me tell y'all how this ends. So she came back and picked me up, and we left together. And can y'all imagine what happened? We got drunk. And 2 days later, she's leaving San Angelo, Texas, and I go to a Celebrate Recovery meeting with my brother-in-law. And I've got a bottle of scotch underneath my seat, and I'm going out into the parking lot and hitting that bad boy, going back in. And on the way home, I turned the wrong way going down 87 and run right into DPS. Lights me up. So I get arrested, naturally. Go to jail, bond myself out, get another DWI that day. Get out, go to my parents' ranch, and my parents had me arrested for trespassing. 3 times in 1 week. And so I went and did 9 months at SATF. And again, Tip Hargrove's involved, right? See, I've got all these players, and they're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. He's going to go do these 9 months, because we have to do something with all these charges. And we're going to dismiss them all outright. And he's going to walk out of there a free man. So I played the game. I went out there for 9 months, played the game, did what I was supposed to do. It's a 9-month to 18-month program. Was out of there in 9 months. I didn't even have to do aftercare, guys. I finagled my way out of that and went straight to Austin, Texas. I'm going to take the bar exam in Austin, Texas, right, guys? And everything's going to be okay. I'm going to live happily ever after and get my license, and everything's going to be fantastic. So I move into this house in Austin, and I'm sober. I'm not drinking anything, okay? I'm trying to study for the bar exam, and I'm like, you know what would be great? I'm lonely. So there's a strip club that's not too far away from here. So I was going to go have lunch. So I go and I have lunch, and we're eating, and I see a girl that I recognized immediately. She recognized me. She worked there. She came over, and we introduced ourselves, and I said, you look really familiar. She said, did you ever live in Charleston, South Carolina? As a matter of fact, I did. Did you go to the Southern Belle? Frequently. That's where I know you from. And lunch turned into a business relationship, which turned into her moving in with me about 2 months later. And at this point, I have full-blown relapsed. I've wrecked my car, received another DWI. So now I'm walking everywhere I go, riding the bus, the Metropolitan bus in Austin, Texas. And she moved a few of her friends in, and I lived about 1,000 feet behind Betachek Middle School. So now I'm running a brothel in a school zone. And my sponsor at the time was an attorney that worked at the Attorney General's office. And he was like, Gabe, this is going to end really bad. So I'm telling you, the school zone really hurts your chances here. from a legal point of view. So in my drunken stupor, in my cocaine and alcohol-induced drunken stupor, I go home and I'm kicking them out. Y'all got to go. This is the end of this party. Well, she's leaving and she's not too thrilled. She punched me about 5 times in the face on the way out and kicked a couple of holes in the wall. And so she leaves, and I decide I've got 2 handles of scotch, and I'm going to drink my sorrow and my fears away, right? So I finished one of them off. It's me and my 2 dogs. And what I didn't know was a friend of hers had called me, and I was drunk, and I said something along the lines of, I'm just going to drink myself to death. Leave me alone. He took it seriously. Called her. They both called the APD and said that I was suicidal. As luck would have it, there were a couple of rounds that were fired in my neighborhood right around that time, so APD dispatched everybody. The SWAT teams, the bomb squads, the whole 9 yards. So I'm sitting in my house, and the first thing I hear is my name come over an intercom, and I'm like, well, that's kind of strange. So I go I peer out the blinds, and there's 3 cop cars sitting in the cul-de-sac. And I'm like, well, that's strange. And immediately in my head, I think that she's called and told that I'm drinking on bond, which you can't do. So I think they're about to no bond me. But why are they sitting in my cul-de-sac calling me over to intercom? Well, I'm not going to open the door. That's not going to happen. So I'm going to shut the blinds, shut the door to that room, and go in and finish my scotch, as a normal alcoholic person would do. Because this is reasonable, all of this. And so I'm drinking, and I'm so drunk now, the cops are outside, and I'm not looking, and I don't know how bad it's gotten out there. So me and my dogs go into my bedroom, and we go to sleep. And I wake up 7 hours later to the smell of plastic explosive, and there's a robot sitting in my bedroom, and the robot's telling me to come out with my hands in the air. The robot wasn't in my bedroom when I went to bed. And so I'm like, what year is this? And I'm like, okay, if there's a robot in my room, I'm going to comply. This has gotten way out of hand. I'm doing what you're telling me to do. So I'm trying to make my way out the door, and I'm so drunk I pass out on my couch, and 2 SWAT teams came in, back door, front door, flash bang grenades through all the windows, break a couple of my ribs, drag me outside. I end up in ER. My parents are there, and they asked my parents to leave, and basically, long story short, they were like, there's a small misunderstanding. Look, man, we didn't put anything in here about you drinking, so really you can just go home once you get approved that you're not suicidal, and I'm good with this, because I want to go drink. I'm like, good, where do I sign? Like, don't sue you? Where's the release at? Like, I get to leave? Okay. Y'all got my dogs are safe, and that's really all I cared about, was my dogs and getting to go drink immediately and not going to jail and being no bonded because I was drinking on bond, because I'm insane. I was persona non grata in that neighborhood after that because they evacuated the whole neighborhood for that whole time, and they had kids and stuff like that. So it's time for Gabe to move, and I moved to East Old Torf in East Austin, and that was a horrible idea because it turns out I like crack cocaine a whole lot. And I can relate. And so I myself tried a little bit of controlled crack smoking while I was working at the Texas Capitol for Senator Bob Duncan. And it was so bad that I'd go into the senator's bathroom and smoke a bowl and go out and run the Senate Committee on State Affairs. And I remember thinking to myself, this is unsustainable. Like, I'm drinking after work to try to calm down. I'm smoking to go, and it's just this is not looking good, guys. And I was like, and I'm on probation this time for the DWI. She graduated with my boss from law school. And so I actually walked in this place and blew numbers in the courtroom in front of Judge, God, and everybody, blew a .17, and I still walked out of that courtroom. Yeah. She said, I can't take you away from Bob in the middle of session. And I'm like, I made the speech of my life. It was great. I'm on the right track. I'm going to get it together. They said, Gabe, please prove us wrong. And I didn't. I proved them right. And it gets a whole lot worse from there. I proved them right. Not only did I prove them right, I lost my job. They asked me to resign because they needed somebody that was sane. And now I'm living on the street. And Well, Ice, the drug dealer, my crack dealer, was living with me at the time too, and I tried to kick him out. And Ice is, it's not his given name, but Ice is, he's like 3 times bigger than me, and he basically set me on the ground, sat on top of me, and called the police. So the police show up, and they take me to jail, and I just set my time out. I spent 3 months in Travis County Correctional Complex, and I couldn't get away from crack cocaine and alcohol, and I actually knew I was safer there than I was out on the street. And when I got out, the first thing I went and did was got a hotel room with my check that I still had, and blew it all on crack cocaine, alcohol, and girls. And then I was homeless. And a friend of mine from the Citadel called my parents. My parents came and picked me up, took me back to San Angelo, Texas. And I tried really, really hard. At that point, when I turned 30 in Travis County Correctional Complex, I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to get sober. And so I went back to San Angelo, and guys, I was struggling so bad. I was on a ranch with my parents, and I'm like y'all know the story. When I'm drinking to the point when I'm detoxing, I'm puking on. I don't even have a bucket next to the couch anymore. I'm just throwing up on the ground. My heart's missing beats. This is a horrible life. This is hell. Okay, I can't go to sleep without getting blacked out drunk. And I spent years doing this. And so I'm out on this ranch, and I don't have any booze, and I'm going absolutely crazy. I drank all the sherry, all the Listerine, you name it. If it had alcohol, I consumed it. And then I drank a bottle of rubbing alcohol. And when I opened it, I said, this will probably kill me, but I really don't care at this point. So I drank that too, and then I started puking up blood, and I got blood banded and went to the hospital and came home. And at the time, when I got back that night, I started having like episodes where I thought I'd gone schizophrenic, and it was delirium tremens, and I thought people were out to get me. I thought they were sending SWAT teams to get me. And I had lost my medication, and they were like, you need to go back to Austin and get your medication. So I went back to Austin to get my medication, and I got on my knees and I prayed in that hotel room because I was going to go across the street to the bar, and something happened, and I had an experience, and it was my first real experience other than the airplane crash with God. And so I had this inkling that, man, there's something here, and I'm working with these guys in AA, and I was introduced to San Angelo Solution Group at this time, and they're involved in my life, and I'm still holding on to me, right? I'm still holding on to the things that Gabe wants to hold on to. And we're going to get into the steps here in a second. We're going to talk about that, but I went back to San Angelo, and I'm working with guys, and I met a girl, and she was cutting my hair, and guess what I did? No, but I made her God. I did. And everything became about this relationship, and I'm still working with guys, but I can feel everything slipping away, and I get 9 months. And guys, I finally got around to taking the bar exam, and I failed it. And because I wasn't studying, my life was so unmanageable. I didn't know how to live life. I was full of fear. I was lying to everybody. I was still on speed that was prescribed to me by the doctor, and I'm abusing it. And I haven't even told my sponsor that I'm on it. I can't be honest with anybody. I'm working with guys, and God, that's like the blind leading the blind. And there's no telling what I'm. And I feel myself, I don't even want to be around my sister's children because I know the spiritual vibes I'm putting off are insane. I knew that. And so her and I got into a fight. This is June of 2014. And the deal was, I lived on my parents' ranch, and I'm studying. I'm going to take the bar exam and pass the dang thing one of these days. And if I drank, I would leave, and I would go to a sober living home. Well, I went outside of town to my girlfriend's house. She lived on the other side of San Angelo in a town called Mertzen. And we got into a huge fight. I lost my medication, and I was going back and forth trying to find it. And we got into this gigantic argument, and I finally had it. And this was really when I was introduced to this concept that anything that I put here that isn't God is going to fail me every single time. And when it fails me, no matter what it is, I'm going to go find something and I want to make myself feel better. Because I'm an alcoholic. And so I walked into her house and I grabbed a bottle of her dad's scotch and I started drinking it. And I blacked out drunk. She made me sleep outside. I came back in. She kicks me out and I drive back to my parents' ranch. And I'm out there. My sponsor and at the time is now my boss now, but my current sponsor now was sponsoring him. They both come out there. And I'm out of my mind intoxicated. I am drunk. I am combative. And they said, Gabe, you need to go to a sober living home. And I'm not hearing it. I'm going to stay with my dogs and I'm going to stay right here. You need to get out of my house right now. So they do. My mom finds out about this and my mom says, oh, well, he's going to leave. So she drives in from New Mexico and she meets the attorney, Tip Hargrove. And they come out to the ranch and they're going to force me out. And so they come inside. I'm drunk in a chair and I'm blacked out drunk. I don't remember this. And they come over and Tip and I get into a fight because he's trying to remove me. So there's a fist fight that ensues. And I always had a hot AR-15 by the front door. And so my mom's screaming, get off him, get off him, get off of him. And he gets off me. And so they exit the house. And I follow them behind them with AR-15 in my hand. And I say, get off of my property. And they turn around and they start walking back at me in the carport. And they say, okay, this isn't your property. This is your mother's property. This is your father's property. And you're not welcome here. And I proceeded to discharge that firearm multiple times. And when in my haze that I vaguely somewhat remember as the most horrifying image that I've ever seen in my entire life. And Tip Hargrove, my family's best friend, who is a surrogate father to me, is lying on the ground, and he says, do you realize what you have done? And I've shot him in the foot. And then I look over, and my mother's been shot in the femoral artery, and there's blood spraying everywhere, and she's dying. And I said, can you help her? He said, Gabe, I don't know. So I threw the gun, and we picked her up, and he took his tie off, and he put a tourniquet on her leg. We put her in the truck, and they took off. And at this point, I figured I've killed my mother, so I've got to kill myself or let someone do it. So I go inside, and I have a 12-gauge shotgun, and I just start drinking. And the state of Texas shows up, Texas Rangers, helicopters, SWAT teams. And I walk outside with a 12-gauge shotgun and I wave it at them. And I call them everything but a child of God. I said horrible things to these people about their families. And I'm begging them to shoot me. And by the grace of God, the negotiator is one of my best friends now, and we work together at the same business. And he said, Kate, they moved the snipers. You have no idea. So I go back inside, and I can't even get them to kill me. And so I'm sitting, and it's this victim mentality, and I'm consumed with it. Just consumed with it, because it's still all about me. They go and get a tank from Abilene, Texas, and they come and they knock out all the windows, and they're throwing in tear gas. And so at this point, it's either walk outside or do myself in. And so I've got the 12-gauge shotgun, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it with my thumb or with my toe, because I don't want to mess this one up. And I can't breathe. And my dogs, I don't even know where they're at. And the thought came to my mind that my father's going to have to clean this mess up. So I got on my knees and I prayed. And I grabbed my Bible that was sitting next to me, and I walked outside with it at 3 a.m. in the morning. And they didn't shoot me. They took me to jail. I spent 9 months in county jail, and I tried to fight this thing. And I still was so insane that I'm making excuses. Well, I was off my medication. Well, they came into my house, and that's how sick I was. I wrote a letter to my best friend, who, thank God, is still my best friend to this day. She gave it back to me. She said, Gabe, I nearly never talked to you again. And 4.5 years later, I read that letter, and I said, this person is insane. And I started crying because it tore me to pieces that I wrote this. I was showed my video of my confession, and it was so gut-wrenching that I said, I'm going to prison, aren't I? And he said, yeah, I'm going to prison. Most people don't have one SWAT team raid. You've had 2. You nearly killed your mother. You're lucky you're not looking at capital murder. My mother is alive, by the way. Right now she is. They saved her life in 8-hour surgery. And I walked back to my jail cell, and I said, I'll sign for whatever time you can get me. And so they got me 8 on Tip's charge and 10 deferred adjudication on her charge. And so I signed for that time, and I had to go do half of it. I had to do half of that 8 because it's an aggravated charge. It's a 3G crime. And I'm sitting there, and I'm in prison, and did intake right here at Middleton. And I went to Middleton, and guys, I'm trying to figure out, I'm so lost. And this girl is still in my life, and I talk to her every night. For 9 months when I was in county jail, she came and visited me. I talked to her every morning and every night on the phone. And I mean, if we had a bad phone call, I had a bad day. That's how sick this was. They moved me from Middleton to Huntsville, then I went from Huntsville to Beaumont. And I'm in Beaumont. That's an 8.5-hour drive from San Angelo. And she came down to visit me with my mother. And my mother at this time had been reintroduced to my life. And we're trying to work on our relationship. And it's touch and go. And she breaks down crying. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. And when she starts pulling out of my life, I'm on a phone in the penitentiary screaming like a lunatic into this thing. And I'm begging, I'm screaming, I'm mad. I'm trying to control her. And I hang this phone up. And I look around and everyone in that dorm's looking at me. And there's 2 cats sitting at the table. And they say, hey, come here, man. You need some freedom because you don't have any. None. And these 2 men are still 2 of my very good friends, and they're both men of God and men in this program. And I sat down with them, and they said, when you get that letter, because you're going to get it, you don't ever contact her again. And I was finally at this point in my life where I was so done and so miserable and so hurt. I'm going to do exactly what you say. This pain, I'm done. And I'm going to hold on to you with the desperation of drowning men, because I'm drowning right now and you're the only tassel I can grab a hold of. And for all you new guys in here, you're surrounded by tassels. You are surrounded by reeds that are God with skin on. Grab a hold of them, because this is your chance. This is where the fork meets the road. This is where you get the opportunity to say, I'm done. This is it. And guys, my journey started that day when I said, I'm done. I'm going to do exactly what you guys say. They said, well, first of all, you just made this person God. And you can't do that. You just cross-addicted with another human being, because we just watched it. You're acting like a real lunatic in the penitentiary. And you're screaming into a phone, and the lunatics in here are thinking you're the lunatic. For real. And I said, you're right. So I started working with these guys, and we started working steps. And man, these guys, it was like they talked to me. It's like God used these guys. It's like, I didn't know if they were angels, but they were speaking my language. And it was exactly the way I needed to hear it, and it was exactly what I needed to hear. And I started reading this book, and I started throwing myself into spirit to God as much as I could. And I did everything they told me to do. And I realized, guys, I grew up, and yes, I prayed in that plane crash, but I blamed God for everything. And I blamed his fan club for everything too. I blamed them for all the wars, for all the crazy stuff that's going on, for the hypocrisy, because I saw this hypocrisy. I said, Gabe, that's not God, okay? That's what human beings do with God, and there's a big difference. You're here to develop a relationship with God, and it's going to save your life, and it's going to give you a whole lot more than just that. So I started doing these things. I started doing a 4-step for the first time. And it wasn't just about writing stuff on paper. It was about getting to roots and causes. It was about getting on my knees and begging God to show me this stuff, because I didn't want it anymore. Okay? It was about, back that up on the 3rd step prayer, when I got on my knees and I prayed, I thought about every single word. It wasn't just words coming out of my mouth. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. This is a sacrifice. I am offering myself up, and I'm good with this right now because I hate who I have become. I hate this fraudulent person. I hate this person that has robbed his family for 31 years. I hate this person who nearly killed his mother. I hate this person who has took everything from everybody that has ever come in front of him. I hate myself, and I don't want it anymore, and I got to die one way or the other. And I thought about every single word of that as I do every time I say it. And then I went and I did my 4th step. And I prayed to God, show me these things, open my eyes, and I did my 5th step. And I couldn't wait to get this stuff off my chest. And when I read, and I thought about this, and guys, when you're working with people and you go in, 6 and 7 is so important. And I sat there and I thought, this wasn't my first 5th step. And I thought real hard, have I told this person everything? Because if I'm going to pass through this arch to freedom, I want to walk through this a free man. It's time to burn the ships. It is time. Everything that I believed in, everything that I thought, everything that I tried got me to this point. And I don't want it anymore. The good, what I thought was good, I was really doing it for me. The bad, which is pretty glaring and obvious, take it all. Please. So I did. Gabe, you can't really go make amends to these people right now. You've said sorry thousands of times, as everyone in this room has done. You're going to have to walk this one out. So I did, and I started working with guys in the penitentiary, worked for the chaplain. I threw myself into God. I figured that if I was raised to brush my teeth, let me go back. I figured that maybe this 10-step thing, owning up to my mistakes, promptly saying sorry when I'm wrong. This was kind of novel to a guy who was right every day of his life for 31 years. So I gave that a shot too. But thank God there's step 11 because I wasn't real great at that. So that's, if I was raised to brush my teeth and clean myself physically and take a shower, I'm going to clean myself spiritually. Every single time I wake up and right before I go to bed, eyes on God, eyes off God. That's how I need my day to be. And that's how it was explained to me. Get your knees on the ground and pray. I don't care if you're in the penitentiary. And I did. And by the way, people have mad respect for that anywhere you go. Mad respect for that. People in the penitentiary, they believe in God and they fully respect God. And they make way for you. I walked through that penitentiary and every single locked door opened up for me. I didn't have a problem with offender or guard. I walked with His power and with His love, and I started to love other people. And I didn't start to love myself. I just started to feel God's love because I was able to love other people, and I was able to make it about other people. And I stopped having this victim mentality, and all this stuff that was happening to me stopped happening, and I started happening to other things. And being that force outside of things, all of a sudden I'm becoming part of the harmony and not the confusion, and it was radically different. And I'm listening and I'm talking to these guys and they're speaking to me and I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, this is tripping me out. And I'm going on this journey and I'm meeting these people, and guys, I stay in touch with all these people to this day. Incredible people. Ace Deuce, Ace Trey, Crip Blood, and we're having stomp down spiritual sessions, and I'm watching incredible miracles happen. Things are happening. God's showing up. There are crazy things that happen that shouldn't have happened that we walked through. And on Christmas Day 2015, I got on the phone and I called home, and my mom said, Gabe, do you want to talk to Tip Hargrove? And I hadn't talked to Tip to that day in my life. I'd written him a letter trying to apologize, and I never heard back from him. And I said, yeah, I'll talk to him. And he got on the phone and we talked for a little bit, and we got off because other people need to call home. And I called back later that night. My mother was crying, and she said, you need to talk to Tip again. And Tip Hargrove got on the phone and said, Gabe, there's something different about you, and I don't know what it is, but for once in your life, it's not about you. I want you to come home. And I broke down in tears in the day room because I finally understood what grace was. I deserved every minute of time that I got when I went to the penitentiary and then some. And there's a really good chance, but by God's grace, that I'm standing here right now if my mother had passed away, because that's a capital murder crime. It's family. And this man has forgiven me, and I don't deserve that. I don't deserve my mother's forgiveness. I deserve the time that I got, and I'm sitting there, and these people are having mercy on me. And then all of a sudden, the whole step started to make sense to me. When I don't go take someone else's inventory, I don't worry about the wrong done to me, because I've done plenty wrong to other people, I promise you, and then some. Who am I to sit in judgment? I clean up my side of the street. I make my amends. And I go and I help other people, and I pass this message on, and I show them what worked for me. And that girl that left me, I had a huge amendment against her, and I started getting on my knees and praying for her every single day until I started to mean it. And I did. I played blessings over her life, and I did start to mean it. And I started to love her again, and that resentment was removed. This is a pretty cool program, guys, because it works. They wanted me to come home. I had to do half my time. The parole attorney said there's no way this guy's going to get out on his first parole. But God. God showed up, and God opened that door. He opened that door for me, and I walked home and walked out to my father's car, and I went home on my first parole. Did 4.5 years. When I walked out the door, guys, I contracted hepatitis C banging heroin when I was smoking crack when I was working at the Capitol. And I walked out of the door, and they gave me this number to call. And I went through all these hoops. My dad thought it was a fraud. And these guys gave me this medication, and it cured me. And I'm like, for free. I didn't have any money. When I walked, and so all these blessings started happening in my life. When I got home, you know who was waiting for me? You know who stayed in touch with me when I was in the penitentiary? Because it wasn't my friends from high school. It wasn't my friends from college. It wasn't my friends from law school. It was the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous. They wrote me in prison all 4.5 years that I was gone. My whole group did. And when I got home, I walked in, they rolled out the red carpet. Welcome, my brother. These are my family. You are my family. They didn't judge me. I still get judged today, and I'm okay with that. That's perfectly fine, because that's not who I'm here to help clearly. When I'm working with other guys, I don't know how many times I hear it, but they say, I picked this dude because he did something worse than me. That's relevant. That is absolutely relevant. Guys, I spent my whole life, 31 years, trying to figure out why I existed. Why? I look for it in bottles of alcohol. I look for it in syringes. I look for it in pipes. I look for it in rolled up dollar bills. I look for it in girls. I look for it in money. I look for it in career. I look for it everywhere. And I kept stuffing it all right here. And it was always too small and just rattled around. And always left me short. And when I started working with people in this program, guys, the first 9 steps, they're great. They get your street cleaned up. They get you freedom. They get a sense of God in here, and things get to start working. You get to start to have a spiritual awakening, and the veil starts to get removed. Where people fail that I see the most is they do not carry this message to other alcoholics. That's where the magic happens. That's what changed my life. That's what changes my life every day to this day. People have said it in here all day today, but when you are sitting and God is using you as a vessel and you're working with somebody else and you see the scales removed from their eyes, there is a sense of overwhelming meaningfulness and beauty that hits you when that happens. And it's that same grace I experienced on that phone. It is the coolest thing that I've ever experienced in my entire life. It's way cooler than any high I ever had, any drunk I ever had, anything I ever experienced. Being part of something that I know is the truth and that is not mine, I just get to live in it and just get to participate in it and watch somebody else get free from it and then watch them go and watch them tell the village and watch them their families come back together. That's a miracle that only God can do. And it's the coolest thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. And then all of a sudden I know that this isn't just a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury signifying nothing. It's not. I matter. I cosmically, eternally matter, and I get to participate in this program. And it's on the top of page 77. Our real purpose is to be a maximum service to God and the people about us. I don't have a license today. We're working on that. I'm Executive Vice President at Principal Lighting Group. We provide LEDs and power supplies to the commercial sign industry. I get to do everything I want legally. I work for two of the guys that are the greatest people on the planet. One of them's in this program. About a quarter of our workforce is in the program. We light things up. I mean, it's a lighting company. It's just ironically kind of cool. I love what I get to do. I love the people I get to work with. And guys, that's how I put food on the table. That's it. My real job is in here. It's working with other people. I turn on the news, and guys, the world's falling apart out there, and it makes me angry. And I watch it, and I'm like, I don't understand how people don't see this, and then that doesn't make me a better person. It simply doesn't. About 3 months ago, I went back to Denver City, and I've been in a relationship that ended kind of abruptly, and there was some pain there. I handled it much better than the last one. So, last one had SWAT teams, but I was supposed to go on a trip with her somewhere else, and instead I ended up going back to Denver City, where I spoke for the first time, and I met this cat, and all these cats, a bunch of these cats that are in here. And I went back there, and I wasn't speaking. I was just going down there to hang out with some cool folks that I've gotten to know. And there was a girl there. She's the one that picked up the book. She's got the least amount of time, and she was struggling. She was struggling with a lot of things. And one of them was her family and her parents and things she had done. And she felt like she was a horrible child. And I said, well, let me tell you a story about a fella I know. And we talked, and we went to a meeting that night, and guys, God showed up. And I don't know where she's at now. I pray for her, but something happened that night, and I knew for a fact, unequivocally, I was in the right place at the right time where I should have been. And guys, worry, anxiety, these are me believing that God won't get it right. Bitterness is me thinking that God didn't get it right. If it's meant to be, it's going to be. And if you have a reason to be, you will be. I was in the right place at the right time, and I knew it, and there was a sense of peace that it flooded me. It came over me. And that's what I was sitting there, and it just reminded me, this is why we do this, guys. Sometimes it's for one person. When you do this thing, life still happens. You still have people die, people leave you, things happen, animals die, there's pain. Because of this program, I can walk through it. Because of this program, when I walk through it, people go, that dude, there's something going on because he can't do that. Only God can do that. Sometimes we have to ride the storm for one person. And we do. And you get there, and you realize it's for one person. And then they go and they tell the village what God did for them. And they go tell somebody else. They go tell somebody else. And they go tell somebody else. That's how we fight back. That's how we make this place a little bit better. And when I do that, I know that I mean something and I exist. And all those things I was looking for, I can go back to them. But to me, it's like touching a hot stove. When I start to feeling pain, when I start to feeling suffering, and I realize that I've exerted my will into this thing, and that's the reason why this is happening, I go back to what I know. And I get the same result every single time. And it is a peace, and it is this overwhelming sense of meaningfulness and grace that I can't put into words. And if you haven't experienced this, God, I'm begging you, please try this. It's available to every single person in this room. A lot of y'all know about it. A lot of y'all experienced it, and it's I watched my sponsor lose his son to a heroin overdose, and he walked through this. And it devastated him. His son was supposed to pick up a year chip the day they found him. Things still happen. Guys, we're engaged in spiritual warfare. And today you get to choose whether you're part of the good side or part of the confusion. It's a binary choice. Salt, light, I get to be all those things today. I get to be the glue in my family. I used to be the person that ruined everything. Every single meal, every single holiday, I was the reason why there was always something wrong. Because I would get drunk and I would pull the tent down over me. Now I'm the guy they come to ask for help. That's incredible. Now I'm the guy that I get to work with incredible people and at this company that blows me away, and I get to do incredible things and work with people, and I have this peace in my life that I never had before. And guys, I can sit with my family, my mom and my dad. And it's not about what I can get from them. It's not about the past. It's not about the future. It's just about being there and loving them in that moment. And it's about what I can offer them, what I can be to them. Because I know they're not going to be here forever. And I can just enjoy this time with them. My sister, naturally, she had a really big resentment because I nearly killed our mother. So she would come to the penitentiary with my mom, and she would sit there and she just wouldn't say anything. And I didn't know how to make an amends to her other than live this out. I wrote her a letter. I said sorry to her thousands of times, like I did everyone else. And so all I could do was just walk this thing out and just take the next right action and do what God wanted me to do. And so I did. And I lived my life, and I put that in God's hands, and I prayed about it, and I left it there because I have no control over this. And one day, about a year after I got out of the penitentiary, she asked me for my address. And I gave it to her, and a letter showed up. And I still read this letter because it blows me away every single time. And it brings me to tears too. So I get this letter, and she says, "Dear Gabe, over a year ago, you wrote to me asking me for forgiveness. You finally put into words what I longed to hear, and I was so grateful. And yet, even though my gratefulness, I didn't respond. I did forgive you, and I do forgive you, but at the time, it was still so much more of a process for me. I was in the process of forgiving you, even though I woke daily declaring forgiveness and blessings. I don't know why it has taken me so long to respond. Part of it sheer laziness as the art of letter writing seems to be lost. Part of it a fear of stirring up feelings I was afraid are still there. Anger, doubt, hurt, which would tell me I hadn't forgiven. And part of it disobedience to God for true unknowns. Either way, I sit here this morning with no stirred up feelings other than love. I am so grateful to have you back. It's been so long, much longer than that physical prison sentence, and I do forgive. And I ask you to please forgive me for taking so long, for being so slow, for being unforgiving and unloving, for not being there for you. Jesus showed me a side of me that I didn't care for, and I struggled madly with it, but today I'll walk free. I love you. I am proud of you. I forgive you. I forgive myself. I desire for us to start anew as brother and sister, to get to know each other, to be a support for each other, to be a listening ear for each other. You are my only brother, and I'm so glad you are mine. I love you, Kristen." That's why. That is why. Don't ever put God in a box. I have sat in front of so many people who had their kids taken away from them by the state of Texas who said, you will never see them again. And they see their children all the time and have a fantastic relationship with them right now. Don't ever put God in a box. I've seen people walk off death row that the state of Texas said, we're going to end this man's life, and God rolled those doors and they walked out a free man. Don't ever put God in a box. He doesn't care about man-made rules. I promise you. I walk San Angelo, Texas, a free man. I still get judged, but I give that to God too. I do what I'm supposed to do, and I go and I work with other people, and I know that that's what my job in this world is. It's not to work at the place that I work at. It is to go and be service to you and God and the people about me. It is about the newcomer, because I promise you, when I'm working with someone whose life is being torn apart, who is on the firing line, they don't give two hoots about who is running for president or what is going on in the government. They just don't. Their life is on fire, and I don't care where they're coming from. I don't care who they are. I don't care what their circumstances were. All I know is this is a child of God in front of me, and that they are dying and their family is being ripped apart. And my job is to light the path of freedom to them and let God use me as a vessel. That's it. I carry the message. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. You know what my spiritual awakening was? It was the day that I realized that this wasn't a curse. It is a blessing. And we are the most blessed people on the planet. Because everyone in here is called. Every single person. And this is available for all of you. And many of y'all have experienced it. And those that are struggling right now, please keep walking this out. Find you a sponsor. Find you a home group. And don't listen to the storm. Keep your eyes on God. And just keep taking that step. And sometimes, guys, it's long, and sometimes it's painful, and sometimes it's grueling. It was 4.5 years for me. And I got everything back, and then some. Every relationship in my life was restored, but one. And it was the one at the time I was praying for God to restore. And now I know why He didn't. And I walk free of that too. And I see her from time to time, and I've got nothing but love for her. This program has changed my life, but it was how I was introduced to God, and it's how I carry my walk. It's how I practice my principles in all my affairs. It's how I've gotten to know it. Incredible people like this. Kevin, yes, you're incredible. Jerry Green. I wouldn't trade any of this for the world. And guys, just like anyone else, I didn't come through these doors on a winning streak. I didn't want to be a AA speaker. It's not what I intended. But I wouldn't trade it. I love everyone in this room, and I love the relationships and the people I've met. I love the guys that I met in the penitentiary that I stay in touch with. Some of these guys will never go home. That is their home. And they taught me so much. They removed the veil, and they helped restore this. This is what this program is about. It's about this. It's about remedying the spiritual malady, and then I straighten out physically, and I straighten out mentally. On page 14 it says, this is simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It means the destruction of self-centeredness. And I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. These are revolutionary and drastic proposals. And once I convinced them, the effect was electric. I think Wendy said, this isn't just stuff that is written down in a book. This is the God's honest truth, and I believe it was divinely inspired. And I have experienced much of heaven, and I've been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence. All you newcomers, don't you want to go on the rocket ride? Don't you smell something more? Because it's there. And it will change your perception of everything in life. Everything. You will not see the world the way you see it now. You will not see your family members. You will not see yourself. You will see it through the eyes and the lens of God. And with that, I'm going to close. Thank you.